Good morning. Today we are going to start with a new chapter, reproduction in plant. Reproduction in plant. The process of producing the young ones from their parents of their own kind is known as the reproduction. Reproduction is made up of two words. Re means again, production means to produce. It means the already existing young ones are producing their babies of their own kind is known as the reproduction. The plant reproduced by the three means asexual, vegetative and sexual. Asexual is a type of reproduction in which one parent is required. That can be a male or a female. Vegetative reproduction occurs by the body parts of a plant, and sexual reproduction is that reproduction in which two parents are required. One is the male and another is the female, and both the gamete, that is the reproductive cell of the male and female, fuses with each other and form a new organism known as zygote. Asexual reproduction. Asexual reproduction in which the single parent is required or the formation of a new plant start with the cell of the single parent. There are three types of asexual reproduction: budding, fragmentation, spore formation. Budding. In the budding, it happens in the yeast basically. In the budding, a small bulb-like structure, cellular growth, forms on the body on the either side of the bud of the yeast, and that bud keep increasing in the size, and it keeps on increasing. Then the nucleus get divided and separated and forms an independent cell separated from the parent. Next is fragmentation. It is very common method of asexual reproduction that found in the alga. Some algas like Spirogyra or the fucus that found in the floating in the pond got asexual reproduction by this method. In this process, the adult organism break into the two pieces from the either side, and each of these fragment grows up and become a new plant. Next is the spore formation. Spore formation occur in the ferns and the mosses that multiplies asexually through the spores. They do not have the seed, they have a spores, that is the microscopic single celled and the reproductive bodies. They have a protective outer covering on their body that is known as the seed coat, or you can known as the spore coat. And once the condition get the favorable, the spore burst and after the thick wall and start multiply and can grow into the new plant. Next is the vegetative reproduction. In some plant, vegetative parts such as the root, stem and leaf are reproduced into the new plant, and this type of reproduction is known as the vegetative reproduction. It occurs by the two methods, natural method and the artificial method. Natural method. Natural method occur by the naturally by the plant parts without involvement of the human being. Number one, the root. Root of the some plant like the sweet potato, dahlia, asparagus can be cutted at sides separately, and the next season they can be sown, and these root can convert it into the new plant. Stem. Stem is a very most common part that is involved in the vegetative reproduction or the propagation. The stem of the plant like oxalis or the grass, they grow horizontally parallel to the ground and almost touch the ground. As their stem touch the ground, they start developing a new roots from the nodes, and the new shoot develop from the plant and after the frequent intervals. Same happens in the mint and the chrysanthemum. The horizontal stem rises from the base of the erect shoot, grow horizontally, and then the shoot arises from the aerial shoot. This shoot become the independent, and when the stem break, they start break away from the parent plant and occurs independently. Even some plants have a stem that is the underground. They have a swollen because they have stored food in them. There are three types of underground stems: the rhizome, the bulb, the tuber, and the corms. Rhizomes you easily found in the ginger. Bulb, you can easily found the bulb in the which is basically a modified leaf, you can found in the onion. Tuber you can easily found in the potato, and corms you can found in the gallodius or colcacia. Next is the leaf. Leaf of number of plants such as the bryophyllum develop a small buds at the each node. That buds are known as adventitious node, and when these nodes become mature, they fall from the leaf from the parent plant and come into contact with the soil and form a new bryophyllum leaf. Next is the artificial method. Artificial method is including the cutting, grafting, layering and the tissue culture. Cutting. In this method generally we use the bougainvillea hibiscus or the sugarcane or rose plant. We cut the stem of the plant and place that into the moist soil. After that, the cutted stem grows its root at the base and convert it into the new plant. Next is the grafting, which is a very common method used in the ornamental and the fruit plants to make the hybrid quality. In grafting, the bud or the cuttid that has a several bud is known as the secunda, the upper part, and one plant which has a root to the crown, that is known as the stalk. We join the second to the stalk by filming together by the method of the gum or the tape or any other means. The stalk, low one, supplies the water and mineral to the second, the upper part, by developing new cells in the new area, and like this a new variety of plant form. It happens in the rose, mango, guava and many other fruit plants. Next is the layering. You found the method of layering in the jasmine and the bougainvillea. In this method, the young branch is lowered down and bent forward to the ground and covered with the moist soil. After some time, this branch grows a new root system, and then it is cutted from the parent plant and allowed to grow as an independently new plant. Next is the tissue culture. It is a very often method used to develop a better variety of crop or a disease-free crop, or especially those crops which are endangered or near to extinct. In this, we take a small piece of the tissue which is known as the explant and grow that explant in the medium of the nutrients in the laboratory. After that, the group of the tissue develop into a group of loosely arranged cell which is known as the callus, and slowly that callus converted into a small plant by developing a root and shoot system, and then this mature plant is replanted into the soil to become a mature plant. What are the advantages of vegetative reproduction? It is very fast method of reproduction. In this, seed may not be required due to the unfavorable conditions. Sometimes seed may not occur. So directly from the part of the plant, we can do the vegetative reproduction. The plant resemble the exactly copy of their parent by preserving the characteristics of the parent. The plants which do not have flower or do not have seed can reproduce by this method. Next is the sexual reproduction. Sexual reproduction is a type of a reproduction in which both male and female gametes, that is the reproductive cell, are required, and that reproduction is known as a sexual reproduction. It is occur in the flowering plant, means that contain a flower. Flower is a reproductive organ of a plant. There are two types of flower, complete and incomplete. Complete is also known as bisexual, which contain both male and female reproductive organ. Incomplete is known as a unisexual, which may contain male or female. Either it contain a male reproductive or a female reproductive. A complete flower has of four parts: sepal, petal, stamen and pistil. Stamen. It bears the anther that contains the pollen grain, which is known as the male gamete, and stamen is consists of the two parts, the anther and the filament. Pistil is also known as the carpel. It is divided into the stigma, style, ovary. Ovary contain the female gamete, that is the ovule. Both the male and female gamete fuses with each other and form a zygote. Mature plant undergoes the process of the pollination and fertilization to become a fruit. Fruit may have one or more seeds depending upon the number of ovules it is having. Let us discuss the pollination and the fertilization. The transfer of the pollen grains from anther to stigma of a same flower or a different flower is known as the pollination. If it is transferred from the same flower, the anther is transferred from the same flower stigma to the same stigma, anther to the stigma is known as the self-pollination. If it is transferring from the anther to the stigma of another flower of a different variety, then the pollination is known as the cross-pollination. Next is the agents of pollination. Agents of the pollination are the agents which help in the pollination. Number one is the wind. Wind is the one of the important agent of the pollination. The flower which get pollinated by the wind must have the following characteristics. Number one, they should be small in size. They are not brightly colored because as they do not need to attract the insect. They do not produce a sweet liquid known as nectar. Their pollen grain must be light in weight or may contain a seed hair, and pollen hair on it so that they can be easily blown away by the wind. Next is the water. The pollination which is occurred by the water, mostly in the aquatic plant. There the agent is the water. The flower should have the following characteristics again. The flower should be small in size. It should not be brightly colored as there is no need to attract insect. It should not contain the nectar. And number fourth one, the pollen grain should be unwettable, that they do not get wet due to water. Next is the insect, the main pollination that occurs through the insect. During this process, the pollen grains stick to the body part of the insect, and when the insect visits to the another flower, the pollen grain get separated from the insect body and the pollination occur. In this type of pollination, the flower must have the following characteristic: that it should be a very brightly colored, it should be very big in size, it should release a sweet liquid known as nectar. Some flower is visited by the nocturnal insects also. Nocturnal means which active during the night time. That flower must not have been brightly colored, they must have a white or light green in color, but they are very strongly scented like jasmine and cacti, so that the insect can be attracted by the fragrance. Next is fertilization. When the male gamete, that is the pollen grain, fuses with the female gamete, that is the ovule, a new member, that is a zygote, is formed, and this occurs by the process of the fertilization. What happens in the fertilization? As soon as the pollen grain reaches the stigma, the number of pollen grains are there. Some of our rose, some of our hibiscus, some of our jasmine, some of mango. Suppose this is a rose plant stigma, that it allow only rose and pollen grains to go inside the style. In the style, it develop a long tube-like structure known as the pollen tube. This pollen tube reaches to the ovule. As soon as this pollen tube enters the ovule, the male gamete, that is a male nucleus from the nth pollen grain, reaches to the female gamete, that is the ovule present inside the ovary, and get fuses with it. If there are 6 ovules, then 6 anther is required. If there are 8 ovules, then 8 anther are required. If all the anthers when all the ovules get fertilized by the anther, only then the formation of fruit and seeds start taking place. This process is known as the fertilization, when the male gamete fuses with the female gamete by developing a pollen tube, by absorbing a certain nutrient at the stigma. Only the particular plant anthers will allow to go inside the ovule, and the zygote is formed after the process of the fertilization. After the fertilization, the ovary get enlarged to form a fruit, the ovule from a seed. The fruit may have one or more seeds depending upon the ovules. The petals, sepals and other part of the plant get shed off because it is not required at all. The fruit is the seed bearing part or the ripened ovary of the flower. The seed is basically a ripened ovule that contain an embryo which is covered by the protective seed coat and converted into a new plant when it gets germinated. The process by which the embryo and the seed become active and begin to form a new plant, and that process is known as the germination. Next is the seed dispersal. We know that the scattering of the seed from one place to another is known as the seed dispersal. As seed dispersal is also required so that the variety of plants can found in the variety of the places easily. It can be occurred by the different method, that is dispersal by the explosion, dispersal by the wind, dispersal by the water, dispersal by the animal. Dispersal by the explosion. It is the simplest way in which the seed automatically gets set it free open by the fruit and get exploded by the mechanism and the seed is released. It occurs in the pea, castor or balsam. Dispersal by wind. Some seed get dispersal by the wind. Here the seed should be very light in weight. It contain a seed hair or a wing so that they can be easily transported by the wind. Example, the dandelion, drumstick and the maple. Dispersal by the water. The seed that dispersed by the water should have a spongy outer covering on them so that they can float on water and carried out to the different distance or a long distance by the ocean one. Mostly the coconut dispersed by the water and some aquatic plants as well. Next is the dispersal by the animal. Maximum dispersal occur by the animal. Mostly freshly and brightly colored fruits are eaten up by the birds and the mammals. When they eat the fruit, they throw the seeds here and there, which result in the development of the plant in the different places. Some of the seeds passes through their digestive tract as they do not get digestive by their body, and they also get dispersed like this method also. Some of the fruits have a hook and the sticky substance that they get stick to the fur of the animal that hide in the grasses, and like this the dispersal of seed occur in different type of plants as well. Duck also help in dispersing the fruits by sticking the seeds in the mud on their feet. Thank you and have a nice day.